So good morning, everybody. My name is Valerio Zanini. I'm a certified Scrum trainer with the Scrum Alliance, and I'm also certified Scrum, way too fast. I'm also a certified product innovation trainer with Spark Engine. And today we are going to talk about velocity, the secret weapon of productive teams. As a Scrum team, I want to learn how to plan my work so that we can improve our productivity. As I said earlier, I'm going to leave the chat open. So please, if you have any questions, let's use the chat to participate. So we can, at the end of the presentation, I will make some room to have a question and answer session. And before we get into some details on how we do things, I would like to share a story. So years ago, I was working for a large bank in the US. I was an agile and product coach. And this is a real story. And I was working with a team that was building a system, a platform, a new product, digital product. And as I started working with them, I realized there were a lot of things that were not working well. The team was demotivated. They've been doing this work for about a year, and still they had no working product. There were too many projects in flight, so they were multitasking like crazy, and the priorities were continuously changing. In fact, there was no product owner, at least no official product owner on the role on the team, and there was no visibility on progress. Nobody knew what was coming up, what was going on, how they were doing things. So as a good coach, I started looking at what was causing this problem. And I noticed a thing, that there was a leader, there was basically what they call the tech lead, was the manager for the teams. And that person was responsible for managing the work to the team. And basically what happened was that the work was pushed down to the team. Every sprint, the tech lead will show up and basically assign 60 points of work to each team, 60 points per sprint. Now, when I started looking at what was going on with the team, the burn down chart didn't lie. They would take on these 60 points of work, sometimes 58, and then by the end of the sprint, they would deliver 28. Basically, they were able to deliver 30 points every sprint. In fact, this was going on for a long time. Sprint after sprint after sprint, the tech lead would show up, give them 58, 60 points, and the team would deliver 30. The next sprint, the tech lead would show up and give them another 58, 60 points, and the tech team, the development team would deliver 30 points. Basically, every sprint, 28 points were not delivered. They were planned and not delivered. You can imagine how the team was feeling. Not very happy, not very motivated. In fact, this was the underlying cause of all the symptoms that we have seen before. And by the way, looking at other teams, this is an ongoing story. In fact, this is a screenshot I took from another different organization, different team. But as you can see, every sprint they report the number of user stories that they committed to doing and the number of user stories that they did. So in this case, they committed 79 points and they delivered 89 with an 88% of success. And the different team committed 7 stories and committed 11 stories and delivered 7 with a 68% completion. And the next sprint, they will show up and they would have a similar situation. And the next sprint again, similar situation. So it looks like work is really pushed down to the teams, but they are struggling to get all the work done. So what can we do to help? And I would like actually to use the chat for you to give me ideas. What would you do? What would you look at? What would you suggest to the team to do if you were there? Let's see if anybody wants to use the chat and give, what should we look at? I see, understand how much unplanned work is interfering with the sprint. Yeah, that's a good point, because if we have unexpected events, work that is showing up suddenly that we need to take care of, certainly is going to interrupt what we're doing. See if there are impediments. Yes, awesome. Yes, in fact, if the team is impeded, certainly they cannot complete the work. Yeah. See if the business can prioritize based on velocity. Yes, that's another thing. Certainly there was a lack of business prioritization in this situation. And certainly also there was no focus on velocity. So let's go look at a couple of things that we can do. And first of all, I would like to talk about the Scrum patterns. The Scrum patterns are patterns that have been experienced across different teams, across different organizations, and they've been shown to provide benefits to the team, benefit to the organization. And teams that have, and these patterns are now documented, so teams can leverage these patterns and apply them to their own situation to improve performance. And today I would like to really mention 3 of these patterns. The first one is called yesterday's weather. Yesterday's weather is basically related to velocity. Looking back, how much work can we do in a sprint based on previous performance? The interrupt pattern is something that you mentioned in the chat here. How much unplanned work is showing up in the sprint? So how much buffer do we want to set up to deal with that? And then the happiness metric. Happiness metric is a measure of how happy a team is. And certainly if the team is not motivated, is not happy, is not going to improve their performance. So if you are able to measure the happiness metric and find ways to improve that, we can help the team improve their performance. So we're going to look at a couple of ideas here, how to do that. Give me 1 second. I want to clean up everything here. And okay, we can move on. Okay, so let's introduce the yesterday's weather. And in particular, I want to introduce 3 concepts: the velocity, the capacity, and the load. The velocity is the historical performance. How much work have we completed in the past, in X number of sprints in the past, to give us an idea of our performance over time so that we can predict how much work we'll be able to do in the future. Capacity is how much work we can do in this sprint. And certainly we can use velocity as a predictor of our capacity for this sprint. Now, even if we have a certain capacity, we may choose not to plan the work up to capacity. We may choose not to fill up our sprint up to capacity. Why? Because if we are 100% utilized, there is no room. There is no room for anything else. Something unexpected shows up. Somebody asks for help. We are 100% at capacity. We cannot do anything to help or to deal with the unexpected event. So we may choose to load our sprint below capacity. And so the load is really the amount of work that we are gonna project to do in this sprint. And let's look how this works out in reality. So yesterday's weather, when we talk about velocity, we have tracked the sprint velocity, the team's velocity over time, and we can see how the velocity over time is changing, starting from 18 points to 22 points, 20 points, and then looking maybe at the last 3 sprints, 23 points, 26, 28. So based on this information, we may say, let's take an average of the last 3 sprints, and the average there will be slightly above 25. So we round it down to 25, and we say 25 is a good measure of capacity for this upcoming sprint. We can use that to plan our sprint. Now, the second pattern is the interrupt pattern. Is the idea that we have unexpected events showing up. We may need to deal with an issue in production. We may need to deal with a change of priority. We may need to deal with something that we thought was easy to do and instead is bigger. How do we do that? How do we manage these unexpected events? Well, if we plan to capacity, we don't have room to deal with any of this. Instead, if we leave a buffer in our plan, then we have room. So for example, let's say that we have a sprint backlog. We have taken a few stories from the backlog, and we can leave a little bit of a buffer to deal with unexpected events. Now, how big is the buffer? How big should we do that? Well, it depends. It depends on the work that the team is usually responsible for. So for example, if you are a support team, if you are responsible for operational issues, like if your team is responsible for fixing all the issues that happen in production, for example, you may want to reserve a bigger buffer. Basically, even if your capacity is, I don't know, 40 points, you may say, we only load our sprint with 8 points, and we leave 90% of our sprint open for unexpected work. This creates the condition for the team to be able to be sustainable and to deliver all the work. Now, how do you determine the buffer size? It's basically the average amount of interrupts over the last 3 sprints. So if you don't know how big the buffer should be, just look back. Like we look back at velocity for determining capacity. We can look back at the number of story points or the number of stories that we have completed in the last few sprints related to unexpected work, and they will give us the size of the buffer. We spoke briefly about team happiness, and this is why this is important. You can see that the red line is the velocity, indicates the velocity for this team. And for some time, the velocity was growing. Then at one point, it started dropping very fast. What happened? Well, we really don't know what happened. But if we look at the measure of happiness, which is the blue line, we can see how happiness started dropping way faster, way earlier than velocity. So we call the happiness a leading indicator for performance. And if we can start seeing trouble in the happiness metric, we can intervene early on before the performance of the team is affected. Of course, that assumes that we are measuring the happiness metric. So how do we measure that? Well, there are different ways to do that. One way I want to share is a comparative agility assessment tool for psychological safety. This is an online tool that every team can use, and it gives you a metric of how the team feels psychological safe, and is a good metric for the team happiness. And if you measure over time, it may give you indication of whether that team happiness is dropping or not, and then you can intervene with any solution you may find. So using all of this, let's go back to our story and see what happened. So the solution. I decided to coach the teams on the need to owning their forecast. They were clearly not standing up, but they were just executing the work that was given to them by the tech lead, not really standing up to their own capacity, owning their forecast. And also the main problem was that nobody knew what was going on, so there was no visibility on progress. So I started sharing the burn down chart, which is available, by the way. Anybody can go in Jira and just pull it up, but nobody had done that before. And based on the information from the burn down chart, the same one I shared with you earlier, I went to their boss, to the tech lead, and I shared my concerns about they were basically delivering 50% of their plan every sprint that was not sustainable. It was having an impact on the team happiness. And the response of the boss was basically, I am their boss after all, so I decide how much work they do. So you can imagine that in this context, helping a team was not an easy task to do and required really some coaching for the boss, for the tech lead, to embrace the change. And after some coaching, he was able to come toward my space. And we decided, instead of doing 60 points, for one sprint, we did an experiment. And we said, why don't we go down to 45? So you still decide how much work they do. You still push it down to the team. But let's push down a little bit less work. So instead of 58, 60 points, let's push down 45. And then the next sprint, I asked to do another experiment. And instead of pushing down 45, let's push down 30, which was closer to the historical velocity of the team. And guess what happened? When we pushed down only 45 points, the velocity of the team increased to 33 points. And when we push down even less, so we push down 30 points, which was at the point below velocity, the velocity increased to 36. So basically, in 2 sprints, we were able to increase velocity by 20%, which is an awesome result. If you think about it, how can you increase the performance of a team in just 2 sprints by 20%? This was just a very easy solution. Let the team plan to their capacity. And we use the velocity as a measure of capacity. So the impact on the team was, of course, the team was happy. They started delivering value. They started demoing the product, and the team happiness increased as well. So to wrap up this story, I would like to share that if you would like to learn more about all these things and how to be effective in helping the team being productive, as a trainer, I offer, of course, classes. The next one coming up is the Certified Scrum Product Owner, which is a weekend class in 2 weeks, October 17 and 18. And I'm sharing here the QR code. If you would like to register, just take a snapshot of this screen and go look at the link. With that, I'm gonna open up the mics. And if anybody has any question, I'm happy to have a Q&A for the last few minutes. Thank you.
I have a team that is kind of new to Agile, and they're not necessarily developers, they're infrastructure engineers. So they're kind of like borderline tech and non-tech. And they look at their work as large bodies of work, and I'm working on moving them from, you know, kind of that waterfall mindset to an agile mindset. And they don't want to break down their stories very much because they feel like work that gets interrupted in the middle is not complete work, so they're not providing value until they're done. So I'm guessing as we start to look at their velocity, they're going to have this big chunks of work that are being completed some weeks, and some weeks they're not. So it's going to kind of mess with their velocity. Do you have like some debate points or some sort of technique that you would use? Would you look at like a trailing 6 weeks, or how would you kind of manage a situation like this?
Yeah, I think I will look back at 3 to 5 sprints and see what happens. I will look at 2 things. One is the average velocity. like a moving average over the last 3 or 5 sprints. And then I will look at how much of the work that they have done is responsive, unexpected, unplanned work versus the planned work.
Mhm.
They will let us understand how much of a buffer we need to create. And in general, I always recommend my team to leave a little bit of a buffer. So consider that slack in the team. You don't want to plan your team or load your team to 100%. You want to leave a little bit of slack so they can adjust. And of course, if they end early and they haven't used the buffer because no unexpected work showed up, they can always go to the product owner and say, hey, product owner, we finish early. What's in the backlog? Let's pull in more work and we can just move ahead. So it's not wasted time. It's just that we have the buffer for predictability of our performance, and also for being able to deliver the goal, whatever sprint goal we decide to commit to.
Thank
You think that is possible to do with your team, Samantha?
Yeah, I think that they have, I think the team has almost 2 personalities. They've got a couple of people that are very transactional and do have a lot of unplanned work. And I think the other potential is to potentially break apart what their different velocities might be, and build in a buffer for, you know, the team that's part of the team that's more transactional. And then the other part of the team, you know, consistently try to push them to try to break down their work a little bit more. Because also I think they introduce key person risk, and they're not kind of living values if they have stories that are open for a long period of time. So, you know, they're trying to do Kanban, but you can still apply this because you can look week over week, even if you're not sprinting.
Yeah. Another thing you may want to look at, are they working together? Are they swarming together? Or is there a situation where they assign work to individual people and they work on their own without really collaborating or helping each other?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. We definitely have a couple of teams that are have specialties, and there isn't a ton of overlap in the work that people do, but they're kind of put together because of the way they service customers internally, but the actual work that they do is quite different. So those are the teams that are kind of harder to make more cohesive.
Got it, yeah. Well, thank you. Anybody has other questions?
I liked your physical pain slide because I think everybody's feeling that physical pain right now sitting in these chairs all day. So I'm definitely going to be stealing that. Thank you.
Yeah, pros and cons of working remotely, right? We got time back because we are not commuting.
Right.
On the other end, yeah, we're not moving too much.
That's right.
That's unfortunate. Yeah, that's very good. So thank you everybody for joining us today.
Before you finish, Valerio, sorry, and just a question about the classes you offer. Do you offer also the advanced Scrum Product Owner classes?
So yes, as an organization, we do offer the class. I personally don't teach the class.
Okay.
I teach an advanced product management program called Spark Engine, which is beyond product owner.
Okay.
It helps product owners to develop advanced product management skills in product management and innovation. And it's a different type of certification than the Scrum Alliance offers.
Okay. Which can you repeat the name, please?
It's called Spark Engine.
Spark Engine. So can I check on the website you post on the slide?
Totally, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
You can go on my website, or you can go on sparkengine.co.
Okay.
And check out those certifications. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So I'm posting my LinkedIn information in the bottom of the slide, and I'll be happy to stay connected with all of you. So if you have any additional questions, please reach out on LinkedIn, I'm happy to be connected and share more. And with that, I appreciate you being here today. Thank you, and have a good day or good evening.
Thank you. Thank you,
All
Valerio.
right,
Thank you so
you.
much, Valerio.
Thank you.